Welcome back to our Essentials of English 101 series. Last week, we looked at how to cite our text at the very end and the works cited page. But the reason we'd be doing that in the first place is if we are talking about the text in the body of the paper, in the paper itself. So how do we cite a book in the text of the paper to show folks that we got this information from this book as we are writing? Let's dive in. When you have a reference to the text in the body of your paper, you need an in-text citation. It's always going to be the first part of that works cited citation in the works cited page, okay? Which is usually the author's last name there, plus the page number that you got it from. So if we're looking at our works cited citation from last time, it's going to look like this. So we know that we need her last name, Rinaldi, plus the page number of wherever we're talking about. So if we have a quote that we're talking about, or we're pointing to a certain incident that happened in the book, we do need an in-text citation, okay? It's always going to be the last name of the author or the first part of that work cited so that folks can find the rest of the information in the works cited page. So the reason we don't put all this information, like Karen Rinaldi's book, It's Great to Suck at Something, in a paper, is because it sort of clogs up the flow of the paper. We want to hear your words in the paper. We don't want to hear all this information about the book. You can tuck that back in the works cited. So what does this look like? Well, if I have a quote, here I've pulled willingness to start something new. Okay, I'm going to put that in my own sentence, and then I'm going to cite it at the end like so. So when I read that to suck at something, you have to have a quote, willingness to start something new. It reminded me of my cousin who just started her own business. And you can see within the period here, before I even put the period, I put these parentheses, I put Rinaldi's last name, and I put the page number where I got that information from. So whenever you have a quote or any information, doesn't even have to be a quote, from the book or any source, you need to cite it at the end of that sentence. Citation is going to be the last name of the author plus the page number, and it goes inside the period. Okay, now you might have noticed something else, which is that that quote was not just plopped in there, it was tucked into my own sentence. That is called integrating a quote. And that is also what you want to be able to do in MLA or really any citation format. So let's dive in. What we might do is when we have a quote that stands out to us from the book, we are going to select a part of it to include in our own paper. So we might have a paragraph that looks like this. What I don't want to do is just copy and paste it and put it as a blob in my own paper. I want to select my quote from this larger paragraph and only use the words that I really need because this is my paper, so it should primarily be my words. We don't want large blocks of text, okay? So let's say I'm interested in pulling out this phrase, we diminish our own lives, okay? So that is the quote that I need to fold into my own sentence then. There's really two ways to do this in MLA. The first way is to introduce it with my own words. The quote that most stood out to me from this chapter was, we diminish our own lives, and then of course I have my in-text citation here before the period. Or I can put Rinaldi's name in the sentence itself and write something like, perhaps the most powerful line in this chapter is when Rinaldi writes, comma, we diminish our own lives. Because I've already given her credit in the sentence itself, I do not need to put her last name at the end here. I can just put the two. So that's kind of cool. Once you have her last name in the sentence, you don't need to duplicate it at the end, okay? So these are two different ways to integrate a quote in MLA format, and both are correct. So this week, what you are going to do for Essentials of English 101 is integrate a quote from the book that stood out to you and include an in-text citation. At the end of it, you are also going to keep including that works cited citation that you did last week so that it's all set to go, okay? Have a great week, and I'll see you online.